She asked, "Can I share your bed?" I smiled. "Only if you share my forever." She asked, "Can I share your bed?" I smiled. "Only if you share my forever." The night she knocked on my door, the rain wasn't just falling, it was screaming. It hammered against the broken windows of my tiny apartment like it was trying to get inside, like it carried something urgent, something unfinished. I remember sitting there in the dim yellow light, staring at the unpaid bills scattered across my table, wondering how life had slipped so far out of my hands. When the knock came again, soft this time, almost afraid. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles life sometimes hides in the darkest moments, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You never know who might need a story like this today. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one ever came looking for me anymore. Still, something in that knock made me stand up. When I opened the door, she was there, soaked from head to toe, her hair clinging to her face, her hands trembling not just from the cold but from something deeper, something broken. Her eyes met mine for a second, and in that single glance, I saw exhaustion, fear, and a kind of loneliness I knew far too well. She didn't speak immediately. She just stood there, breathing heavily, like she had run miles just to reach this one door. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked if she could come inside. I should have said no. My life was already a mess. I barely had enough for myself. Trusting strangers was exactly a luxury I could afford anymore. But something inside me, maybe the part that still remembered what it felt like to need help, stepped aside before my mind could argue. She walked in slowly, careful, almost like she didn't want to leave footprints in my already fragile world. I handed her a towel, and she wrapped it around herself, sitting quietly on the edge of my old couch. For a while, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence, and somehow it felt like it was speaking for both of us. Life hadn't been kind to me either. Just a year ago, I had everything, or at least I thought I did. A stable job, a small but comfortable home, and someone I believed would stay forever. But life has a cruel way of testing the things we trust the most. I lost my job first, then my home, and eventually her. She said she couldn't build a future with someone who couldn't even hold the present together. That sentence had stayed with me longer than she did. Since then, every day had been a quiet battle, finding work, stretching meals, pretending I was okay when I was. The loneliness had become so familiar that it almost felt like a part of me. And now here she was, a stranger sitting in my room, carrying a storm of her own. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost fragile. She didn't tell me everything, not right away, just pieces, enough for me to understand that she had nowhere to go, enough for me to see that whatever she had run from, it had broken something inside her. The hours passed slowly. The rain didn't stop. At some point, the silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was calm, and then she asked the question, not suddenly, not boldly, but gently, like she was afraid the words might shatter if she said them too loudly. She asked if she could share my bed just for the night. For a second, time froze, not because of what she asked, but because of what I felt in that moment. Not desire, not confusion, but something deeper, something human. I saw someone who was tired of being alone. And maybe I was too, so I smiled, not because I had all the answers, but because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely empty. I told her she could, but only if she was willing to share something more than just a night. Only if she was willing to share a future. She looked at me like she didn't understand. Maybe she didn't. Maybe neither of us did. But something shifted in her eyes, something soft, something hopeful. That night, we didn't talk much. We just existed in the same space, listening to the rain, sharing warmth in a world that had been cold to both of us for far too long. Days turned into weeks. She didn't leave, and somehow I didn't want her to. We started building something, not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly. She found small ways to help, cleaning, cooking, bringing light into a place that had forgotten what light looked like. I found work again, not something big, but enough to keep us going. But more than that, we started healing. There were nights she would wake up from nightmares, her breathing uneven, her hands shaking. I never asked too many questions. I just stayed there, reminding her she wasn't alone anymore. And there were days when my past would come crashing back, moments when I felt like I was still that man sitting in the dark, surrounded by failure. And somehow she would sense it and sit beside me without saying a word, just being there. We became each other's quiet strength. It wasn't perfect. We argued sometimes. We struggled. There were days when the weight of our past felt too heavy to carry, but we didn't run. That was the difference. We stayed. Months later, life began to change in ways I hadn't imagined. I got a better job. She started working too. We moved into a slightly bigger place, not luxurious, not perfect, but ours. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt possible. One evening, as we sat by the window watching the rain, just like the night we met, I realized something. That knock on my door hadn't just brought a stranger into my life. It had brought me back to life. Before the story ends, I want you to pause for a moment and leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching this from, which country, which city. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled and who it has reached, because stories like this, they belong to all of us. They remind us that sometimes the people who save us don't come with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes they come in the middle of a storm, broken, lost, and just as scared as we are. And somehow that's enough. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe, even for a second, that life can still surprise you in beautiful ways, then don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your support helps stories like this reach someone who might be waiting for their own knock on the door. And maybe, just maybe, they'll find their forever too.